deals into two categories. One is easy and straightforward, and then two is, cute by half, or, the too hard bucket. This is clearly in that second category, but it doesn't mean
Why
that
is it in that category?
Well, it doesn't mean that it won't work. In our group chat with the rest of the guys, one person said there's a lot of complex law when you go from a nonprofit to a for-profit. There's lots of complexity in deal construction. The original investors have certain things that they want to see. There may or may not be, legal issues at play here that you encapsulated well in the last episode. I think there's a lot of stuff we don't know. So I think it's important to just give those folks the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, if you're asking me, it's in the too hard bucket for me to really take seriously. Now, that being said, it's not like I got shown the deal, so I can't comment. Here's what I will say. The first part of what Zach said, I think, is really important for entrepreneurs to internalize, which is, where can we make money? The reality is that, well, let me just take a prediction. I think that Google will open source their models because the most important thing that Google can do is reinforce the value of search. And the best way to do that is to scorch the earth with these models, which is to make them widely available and as free as possible. That will cause Microsoft to have to catch up, and that will cause Facebook to have to really look in the mirror and decide whether they're going to cap the betting that they've made on AR, VR, and reallocate very aggressively to AI. I mentioned this I did this Lex Friedman podcast, but that should be what Facebook does. And the reason is, if Facebook and Google and Microsoft have roughly the same capability and the same model, there's an element of machine learning that I think is very important, which is called reinforcement learning. And specifically, it's reinforcement learning from human feedback, right? So these RLHF pipelines, these are the things that will make your stuff unique. So if you're a startup, you can build a reinforcement learning pipeline. How? You build a product that captures a bunch of usage. We talked about this before. That data set is unique to you as a company. You can feed that into these models, get back better answers. You can make money from it. Facebook has an enormous amount of reinforcement learning inside of Facebook. Every click, every comment, every like, every share. Twitter has that data set. Google inside of Gmail and search. Microsoft inside of Minecraft and Hotmail. So my point is, David's right. The huge companies, I think, will create the substrates. And I think they'll be forced to scorch the earth and give it away for free. And then on top of that is where you can make money. And I would just encourage entrepreneurs to think, where is my edge in creating a data set that I can use for reinforcement learning? That, I think, is interesting. That's kind of saying, I buy the ingredients from the supermarket, but then I can still construct a dish that's unique. And, the salt is there, the pepper is there, but how I use that will determine whether you like the thing or not. And I think that, that is the way that I think we need to start thinking about it. But investment in TensorFlow.
No, TensorFlow, the public source, came out of Google, and then you invested in another company.
Well, we're building silicon for machine learning. That's different.
Right. But it's based on TensorFlow.
No. The founder of this company was the founder of TensorFlow.
Oh, got it. Okay.
No, sorry, not of TensorFlow. Pardon me. Of TPU, which was Google's internal silicon that they built to accelerate TensorFlow.
Right.
If that makes sense. This opportunity here is for Facebook. I mean, they need to get in this conversation ASAP. I mean, to think that, look, PiTorch was a pretty seminal piece of technology that a lot of folks in AI and machine learning were using for a long time. TensorFlow before that. And what's so funny about Google and Facebook is they're a little bit kind of they're not really making that much progress. I mean, Facebook released this kind of rando version of AlphaFold recently. It's not that good. I think these companies really need to get these products in the wild as soon as possible. It cannot be the case that you have to email people and get on some list. I mean, this is Google and Facebook, guys. Come on. My son was telling me, he's like, hey, Dad, do you want me to tell you when the best time to use ChatGPT is? I'm like, huh? He's like, yeah, my friends and I we've been using it so much. We know now when we can actually get resources.
Oh, wow.
And it's such an interesting thing where like a 13-year-old kid knows, when it's mostly compute intensive, that it's unusable. What you're doing right now is you're creating a human feedback reinforcement learning pipeline for ChatGPT. So just the fact that you asked that question and, over time, if ChatGPT has access to your GPS information and then knows that you went to restaurant A versus B,
yes,
it can intuit, and it may actually prompt you to ask, hey, Jason, we noticed you were in the area. Did you go to Bottega? If you did, how would you rate it 1 through 5? That reinforcement learning now allows the next person that asks, what are the top 5 restaurants, to say, well, over 1,000 people that have asked this question, here's actually the best answer versus a generic rank of the open web, which is what the first data set is. That's what's so interesting about this. So this is why if you're a company that already owns the eyeballs, you have to be running to get this stuff out there. What you said last week, and I thought back to the music industry in the world of Napster. And what happened was there was a lot of musicians, I think Metallica being the most famous one, famously suing Napster because it was like, hey, listen, like you're allowing people to take my content, which they would otherwise pay for. There's economic damage that I can measure. That legal argument was meaningful enough that ultimately Napster was shut down. Now, there were other versions of that folks created, including us at Winamp. We created a headless version of that. But if you translate that problem set here, is there a claim that Yelp can make in this example that they're losing money? That, if you were going through Google or if you were going through their app, there's the sponsored link revenue and the advertising revenue that they would have got that they wouldn't get from here. Now, that doesn't mean that ChatGPT can't figure that out, but it's those kinds of problems that are going to be a little thorny in these next few years that have to really get figured out. The other gray area that isn't there today but may emerge is when Section 230 gets rewritten. Because if they take the protections away for the Facebook and the Googles of the world for being an algorithmic publisher and saying an algorithm is equivalent to a publisher, what it essentially saying is that an algorithm is kind of like doing the work of a human in a certain context. And I wonder whether that's also an angle here, which now this algorithm, which today, David, you said the example, I read all these blog posts, I write something. But if an algorithm does it, maybe can you then say, no, actually there was intent there that's different than if a human were to do it? I don't know. My point is very complicated issues that are going to get sorted out. And I think the problem with the hype cycle is that you're going to have to marry it with an economic model for VCs to really make money. And right now, there's just too much betting on the come. So to the extent you're going to invest, it makes sense that you put money into OpenAI because that's safe. Because the economic model of how you make money for everybody else is so unclear. Associates bang on some law model for a year. Again, that's that reinforcement learning we just talked about. I think you'd get precision recall off the charts and it would be perfect. By the way, just a cute thing. I don't know if you guys got this email. It came about an hour ago from Reed Hoffman. And Reed said to me, hey, Chamath, I created Fireside Chatbots, a special podcast miniseries where I will be having a set of conversations with ChatGPT. So you can go to YouTube, by the way, and see Reed having, and he's a very smart guy, so this should be kind of cool. And by the way, ChatGPT will have an AI-generated voice powered by the text-to-speech platform Play.ht.